Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon to anyone joining me from Bermuda, and good evening to anyone that's joining me from Dubai. We will get started in just about 5 minutes to give people a chance to join from all the different platforms. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us 5 minutes and we'll be ready to start talking about AI ethics. Hi, sweetie. Just gonna give people four or so more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So excited for the session. Just a few more minutes, and then we will go ahead and hit started. Yes, we have 3 people joining us from YouTube. Exciting. If you've joined us and you just want to say hi, I would appreciate a hi in the comments. Welcome to the webinar. Hi, Ms. Karen. Thank you so much. Looking forward to talking with you. Four people on the YouTube. Awesome. One moment, folks. We just have a few people that joined on the Zoom. I'm just going to tell them to come over to the YouTube side of things. Sorry, I was just talking to myself. I apologize. I didn't realize my mic was muted. So, hi. Okay, we'll start over from this. Thank you, Miss Karen, for letting me know. Okay, so let's start over. We'll go back a slide. So, thank you all so much for joining me. My name is Kameron Young. I am originally from Bermuda, and I am the founder and CEO of Tombolo Research. We are an AI and robotics company that is based in Dubai, and we have a robotics product that will be coming out in the summer of 2026. And I would just like to say hello to everyone. So, hi, Angela, Miss Karen, Mr. Jason, thank you for joining. Other people here excited? Great. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm sorry, I can't see one of your names, but at the 3DDS, lovely to meet you, and thank you for joining. So let's get started. So Tombolo Research, we are an AI and robotics company, and one of the things that we wanted to focus on was trying to sorry. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to focus on for our first webinar was talking about AI ethics, because it's such a huge topic, right? Everybody is talking about it, and it's also very important, but I feel like there's just a lot of buzzwords around it. You hear about safety, privacy, and security, but you're not actually sure what that means for you as a person or how you can start implementing it into your business. Oh, hi, Ali. Thank you for joining. So we're going to be talking about AI ethics in today's webinar, and I'm excited to get into it with you. And also to say thank you so much to the people that have joined already, and I'm excited to go into it with you. One moment. Just one more person trying to get on. Okay, so let's hop in. So again, why does AI ethics matter right now? There's a huge amount of people that are using AI around the world, and that's only expected to grow as the years go on. So as the slide says, we have 378 million people using AI tools worldwide this year, 800 million people on ChatGPT. The majority of organizations are using AI in some sort of capacity. You yourselves probably use AI every day. If you wouldn't mind sharing what kind of AI tools you're actually using. So are you using things like ChatGPT, Perplexity, maybe Midjourney, and also how are you using them? So if you wouldn't mind sharing, I would love to know how you're using some AI tools. So it's a huge topic. And of course, when it comes to AI ethics, you have to think about, well, how many people are using these tools safely? And then of course, when you're using these tools, where does what you're talking about actually go? So once you have that conversation with ChatGPT, because it feels like a friend, right? If you're just chatting and it responds back to you, or you ask it for something and it gives it back to you. So where does that information go at the end of the day? And who's keeping it secure? Who's looking out for you? So let's talk about that. So what's happening right now in terms of AI and the whole data protection space? So you might recognize some of these brands. You have Flow and 23andMe. Now these are two huge companies that I'm sure most people already know about. Let's start off with Flow. Flow is actually a women's menstruation app, but it was created by a man that generated it and posted it out. But millions of women use it every year to track not only their menstruation, but also pregnancy, hormones, and everything. So as you can assume, this is very sensitive health data, especially for the women that are using it. But unfortunately, Flow went through a data breach, I think back in 2023 or so, where they actually ended up having to pay a lawsuit settlement of $56 million because they had lost access to people's data. So people were giving them their data willingly and freely, expecting it to be safe. But unfortunately, the company didn't have as many security policies in line, and their data and people's data ended up getting hacked and stolen, which is awful. Then there's 23andMe. They also went through a similar issue where they lost a lot of their user data. So 23andMe is a genetics testing app. So you're able to send in your genetic samples, and then it gives you back a whole history of your genetics. So it'll tell you where your family is from, what percentage you are from these different countries. So maybe you're about 36% Native American or something like that. So that's what the company would tell you. And unfortunately, they also went through a data breach where they lost a lot of their user data because they got hacked. So it's these companies, and you're putting your trust and your faith in them, And then things like this happen, unfortunately, where your data isn't as secure as they're making it sound out to be. So let's talk about the personal side of things. So if it's your data, it's your choice, it's your impact. So at the end of the day, the companies are coming to you for your data. So they're really asking you, how can, like, if they're wanting to use the data from you, you as the user should have the control. And so it's important that we pay attention to how they're using our data, what they're training it on, and of course how they're monetizing it. So it's not just the one company, but how are they using our data to make money again later? All very important things to consider. See a couple of people joining on. 1 second. Oh, thank you. So, hi, Shayan. So, Shay says he mostly uses ChatGPT and Perplexity for research purposes and idea building. And GPT he uses as the main brain, and then Perplexity is an assistant for deep research and information gathering. That's exciting. So it's cool to see how everybody's starting to use it. So again, if you wouldn't mind sharing how you like to use AI, and then we can talk about how you can keep yourself safe while you're using some of your favorite AI. So as we start to use it, the likes, the comments, the shares, the notifications, it all builds up. And every click, like, and search will tell a story. But who's reading that story about you? So who has access to that story that you're sharing with these companies, especially when you're using all these really cool systems? Which I'm not knocking it. Most of the systems are pretty exciting, but then you also have to look a little bit deeper and think to yourself, well, how's my information being used? How are they storing it? Are they using it to train other models? And if you're not sure, then you should definitely look into that. So here's what AI knows about you. I like to think of it as like the tip of the iceberg, what the majority of us will know and think of at the top of our heads, versus what's actually a little bit deeper, that like 90 or 98% is what it's able to infer about you. So just think about, how do you like to prompt AI? You could drop it in the comments or just take a second to think. When you talk to ChatGPT, for example, how do you prompt it? What do you say? Do you give it context about you, for example? Okay. Angela says she prefers using it for research and it's replaced Google for her. So, AI is being used in a lot of different ways, mostly research, it sounds like. That's what everybody seems to be saying. Okay. If anybody uses it in a different way, I would love to know. But think about when you're prompting these, how much context are you giving it? And then also, how much is actually necessary in order for your point to get across? So how much do you need to tell it in order for it to understand what you want to be able to get it to do? So maybe you're saying, like, I'm a teacher and I teach students from this age group. Or maybe you want help with your business. So you're saying, I want to make X amount of money by this time. So the more context that you give it during the prompting, and also just like based on how you respond to the answers it gives you, it's able to infer a lot about you. So it can tell more about your family, your healthcare status, financial status as well. And if you're a company using AI, the more like times that you're asking it questions about your company and you're trying to get it to give you some more insights, that's also more data that it's gaining about you, not only as a person, but as a company. So for example, for entrepreneurs like myself, you're using AI to help you ideate, research, and then maybe even build some products. So it's very important to consider, like, not only what are you sharing intentionally, so like what are you telling it by prompting it, but also by answering and interacting with it, how else is it gaining that data from you? So what else is it learning about you? Oh, Angela says that she also works with young people and she has concerns seeing them rely on AI too much, and that she doesn't give any personal details because she doesn't trust it with that regard. Completely agree. Like, I think honestly, even when you are super safe and you try to keep as much personal context away, sometimes even the way that you interact with it or give it feedback can also give it some kind of information to infer from you. So it's important to be super careful with the way that you interact with AI. You never know how much it might be able to get from you. So it's very interesting to be safe. And I think I want to like pause here for a moment, because another person had also asked me a question about young people and keeping data safe. I think that was Miss Karen who had sent me a question about how do we keep young people to keep their critical thinking skills. So like, not only what does the AI know about you, but how much thinking is the AI doing for you? Very interesting topic. So I think that at least for students on that perspective, we can think about how do they, I guess, we're going to be teaching them more tools about how to use the AI safely. And I'll get to that as we get through the rest of the workshop. But keep on sending questions if you have anything or any little comments. I would love to hear them. Thank you so much for being so engaged so far. Oh, sorry about that. So let's talk about algorithmic bias, the hidden discriminator, I like to say. There's a lot of different examples of when AI can be discriminative against people. If there's a really good book about this, it's called Weapons of Math Destruction, which I'll send an email with the list of resources that we talk about in the session today to anybody that's already registered. So this one it's a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. And it's great because she goes into a lot of examples that she, as somebody that's a researcher in AI and is working on AI, and she breaks it down as to how these different like big algorithms, how they use people's data to make decisions. And then it can be sometimes confusing because it's a black box. And has anybody heard of the term black box? Maybe you've heard about it beforehand, but basically there's a couple of different models. So you have the black box AI, which is when you don't know how it's doing or how it's making the decisions and how it's giving you the answers that you're requesting. So that would be more like a deep learning type AI model, which is what the majority of AI models are today. And then you also have the more explainable AI, which is the one that I personally prefer, because it's able to explain to you like, okay, I made this decision based on X, Y, Z. So you can see a path of how it's making the decisions. But unfortunately, when you don't have that explainable side, or at least like some way to understand how the AI is making decisions and what data it's using to do that, then you get this algorithmic bias, this huge like discriminatory side of AI. So let's talk about a couple of case studies where this has actually happened. For example, Amazon back in 2018, they had an incident where they created an AI recruiter. And the issue was that it was recruiting, I believe, about 40% more men than women. And so they ended up having to roll it back because they were realizing that it wasn't being fair when it was recruiting people. It was leaning a lot more towards men than women. And so they rolled it back and they weren't using it anymore. This is Dr. Joy Buolamwini. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of her story, but she's one of my favorite, I guess, women in AI. So basically, Dr. Joy was working at the MIT Media Lab for her PhD, and she was working on a facial recognition model. If you're not sure what that is, it's just when AI is able to recognize your face out of other faces in the data set. So what she was recognizing was that the AI was unable to recognize her face, and it was due to her darker skin color and the lack of representation of that in the data set. This is also a huge thing. So if you're not being represented and added to these data sets, unfortunately, you will get missed out because the algorithm will have no frame of reference as to what that person looks like. So her algorithm didn't recognize her face as a person because her skin was darker than the other people in the data set. So it wasn't until she wore this white mask that you see in the picture that it was able to say, oh, that's a person. So it's very interesting to see how, like, what kind of data set you have and the way that you use it is able to also impact how other people, yeah, Angela says she loves Dr. Joy. Yeah, me too. She's great. And she actually has a book called Unmasked, and it's good. You should look it up. It's a really good one. So this is also, it's also very important to consider, like I said, how can you create a data set that is fair and that really includes all the different people that your model is going to be used by. So how can you make sure that your data set is very representative and very equitable as well? Very important. And there's quite a few like healthcare issues as well when it comes to AI. So when you're implementing AI in more of a healthcare setting, how can you make sure that the people that you're using it for, like the patients and things, are being represented? And then I did a talk with Queen Mary's medical students before, and one of the questions that they asked me was, how can we make sure that the model isn't being skewed to one side? So for example, if you have a data set of people from a smaller population, for example, Bermuda, where I'm from, how can you make sure that when you're doing the training and you're trying to focus on that data set, that it doesn't accidentally skew the model because it's such a small population, and then it ends up focusing on that one a bit too much. So it's really interesting how you have the things you have to consider when you're training these models. Now, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in chat. Happy to ask as we go along. My plan for the session is to give you just about 10 more minutes of me going through the slides, and then I'd like to go through some of the questions that you all sent me via the registration form. So I'm excited for that. And then we can have more of a conversation for the last bit of the webinar. So let's transition to the business side. why is it that when you have a business that the AI actually matters to you? So as a business owner or somebody that's working in the corporate world, how do you think about why AI matters to you and to your company that you're working in? Well, I have these 4 topics here that you can see. So I have regulatory risk, reputational damage, operational risk, and competitive advantage. So let's start with regulatory risk. So when it comes to regulations and being compliant, it's important that you consider like what are the consequences to your business if you're not considering the AI ethics or the ethics of bringing in different technology. So if you just, you find a ChatGPT API, you drop it in your business, like can you imagine like where the people you have to consider so many things. Where is the people's data going? How is that model trained? Does it actually matter for your business use case to have the AI in there? All of this is very important to consider. And there's actually a lot of regulatory risk around it as well. I think that the GDPR will give a 4% fine towards anyone that's not considering the AI ethics when they're using AI in their business. It's really interesting to see how the things that you have to consider as a business owner in terms of the AI ethics of things from the regulatory side. There's still a lot of gaps, I would say, because not as many regulations have been implemented as would be, I think, necessary. And that's mainly a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, as a business, you want to be able to promote innovation, right? You want people to be able to continue using AI and innovating with it and bring in new solutions for you, because that's the point of AI. You want to be able to use it to advance and enhance yourself. But at the same time, you have to consider like how are the people that are using the AI in your business or even like your customers, your employees, how does that affect them? Like where's that data going? How are you keeping them safe? All of those things have to be considered as well. Very important here. Give me one moment. I had some extra little notes I want to share with you. Okay. And then let's talk about the reputational damage. So as I mentioned before, I gave you 2 company examples. So that's Flow Health and then 23andMe. So can you imagine the people that had given them their data and trusted them with their public health data? You have to consider that reputational, I guess, strike against them now. So now when somebody hears about Flow or they hear about 23andMe, they're going to immediately have this kind of pushback of, well, you guys didn't take care of people's data beforehand. So it's also important for you as the business to take care of your own reputation when you're being able to bring in these like technologies and AI tools. They're exciting, as I said, and great for your business, but one wrong misstep and it might also damage your reputation quite a lot. So you have to consider quite a few things and also make sure that you're being trustworthy, be transparent, be honest, and make sure that you take care of people's data when they're trusting you with it. Very important. Exactly. So I have two comments here from Ali. Ali says, actually, it's a very important aspect to consider, and he started learning about it recently, and it's very tricky. Yeah, completely agree. It's a bit of a fine edge to walk, because on the one hand, you want to be able to bring in all these really cool innovation, but on the other side, you want to make sure that the people that are using it are being not only protected and looked after, but also that their data is secure to a high level. So you don't want it to be exposed to anything, like any bad actors or anything like that. So it is very much a tricky thing to do. And Shayon says, there's not many security protocols in place to help protect user data from being shared. Exactly, yeah. That's because most companies aren't considering it right away when they bring in the AI, because of course, AI is very exciting. Everybody wants to bring it in, everybody wants to try it and see where it can take their business, to the next level, but nobody's really talking about that ethical side of things, like, wait a minute, who has access to that data? How is the model being trained? And then of course, how do you then implement it and make sure that you continue to monitor this kind of thing? So agree, totally good point. Thank you, guys. And then we have the operational risk here as well. So being able to make sure that when you're operating in the business and you rely too heavily on the AI, how do you know when something goes wrong? What can you do? So like think about what you're replacing the AI with. Like what are you using the AI to replace? And is it actually necessary? So you don't want to have like everything running on AI and then one moment a server goes down and then your business goes down with it. So it's very important to consider like for yourself and for your own protection really, what tools you're using and how you can make sure that they're maintained well so that they're still running when you need them to be. And then of course, using AI ethically will also give you a competitive advantage as a business. So think about how, like I mentioned, a lot of your competitors will just be implementing as much AI as they can without considering the ethical side of things, like the data privacy, the security, and ensuring that people's data is safe, or that also that it works well with their business. So you, as a business owner that is actually considering the whole privacy and making sure that it's being implemented properly, puts you at an edge. It gives you the edge against those competitors as well. And that also will help you when you start to attract talent, because 60% of talent has mentioned that they want to work in a company where AI access is not only considered, but it's a standard. So you being the company that has that standard is going to be really good for you when it comes to attracting new talent to your business, which is great. Okay. Sorry, Canva's giving me a hard time. Okay. So I have 5 pillars of AI business ethics that I think are super important and great to bring in. So let's go through some of those together first. Okay, so let's start off with transparency. Transparency is so important because users really need to know, like, when AI is making decisions about them and how much that affects them. Because there was quite a few examples of when, for example, from the book, Weapons of Mass Destruction, what the author mentions is that there was one data set that was trying to evaluate teachers, but it only evaluated them based on test scores. So you can imagine what happened. A lot of teachers were unfortunately faking the test scores, or maybe even inflating them a bit as well, so that it looked like their class was doing really well. And then this was the only thing that they were judged on, be able to keep that job. So unfortunately, the teachers that didn't have great test scores, it wasn't considered, what happened in the students' home life. Our government's looking at this. Yes, and I will come back to that as well. So we're going to be talking about that too. So they were talking about, so the algorithm only looked at test scores, but it didn't consider the student's background, that relationship, that teacher-student relationship, how well they were developing at that time. And unfortunately, quite a lot of really good teachers were let go just based on that algorithm's decisions. So it's important, and they didn't know why. None of the teachers knew why until later, much later, they found out that it was just based on test scores. So it's a very unfortunate event. So transparency, very important. So that was, again, it also links back to what we talked about with the black box of AI. So you don't want an AI that's just making decisions without actually explaining to you where it's getting that from, like where in the data did it come from? Was it the developer's decision? Was it the AI itself just making decisions? Very important to have that explainable side of AI, not only for you as the business or you as a person, but also for anybody that's using the AI that you're implementing. So it's good to consider. The second pillar is all about fairness and bias mitigation. So it's important when you are implementing these AI that you're thinking about, for example, your data set. So if you remember my example from Dr. Joy Bulan-Winnie, her original data set most likely didn't include people of darker skin colors. So when she tried to use a facial recognition algorithm on herself, it didn't recognize her as a person or as a face at all, because it couldn't tell that a person of darker skin would be a person, which is awful to say, but that's what happened with the algorithm. And so it's important to consider these things. I actually have another example, which he said it was funny at the time, but like when you think about it, it's a little bit shaky. So we had another person on my podcast, it was from Kameron's Lab. So Kameron's Lab Dive In is another platform that I have as a podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, like anywhere that you love podcasts. And we had a guest named Kameron Morton. He's actually a Bermudian AI researcher, and he focuses on computer vision. He's based in Silicon Valley now. But one of his original projects, like way back in the day, so much earlier before, just a little student's project, when he was first getting into AI, he built this like a little facial recognition algorithm, but he only used himself and his friend as the people, and it was meant to link to a Nerf gun, which would then aim at one of them, so either himself or his friend. So unfortunately, when he turned it to the class and it had only seen those two people as the initial data set, it had no idea what to go for, and it just went for the person that looked the closest to him. So it's important as well to make sure that your data set is diverse and that it includes as many people as you know that your business is going to be interacting with. So if you have any outliers or people that aren't being considered, then they're not going to be represented well in the data set, and the AI won't be able to handle that. It won't be able to include them properly. So it's important that you have a diverse representation in your training data. It's also good to have regular bias and audits. So look at like is your algorithm, like how did it interact with the different clients that you have? So was it maybe looking at this person based on their like XYZ data set points? Maybe this person had a different credit score than the other? Did it only focus on that, or did it look at all the different range of data that it had available? It's good to look at these things. And of course, a big thing is accountability. So who do we point the finger at if the AI model isn't doing what it was meant to do? So if your AI model isn't, maybe makes a mistake, or if it incorrectly classifies somebody as something or incorrectly gives the wrong information, who's accountable for that? Is it you as the business? Is it whoever you got to train the AI model for you? It's a bit of a gray area that not many people are discussing. So important to consider that as well. So who can we hold accountable? We need to have AI governance structures, things like an ethics committee, or people that are like just like the human in the loop, keeping things keeping things in perspective. So who do we hold accountable for these things? Also something to consider. The last two is privacy and data protection, and then human oversight. I'll put those two together, just considering the time. As you can see, this is a topic where I could be talking for quite a long time. So privacy and data protection, we want to be able to make sure that the data that people are giving you and trusting you with is actually being kept secure, so that you don't have incidents like the Flow Health and the 23andMe. So you don't want that to be your company. You want to make sure that the people's data is actually being protected properly. And then, of course, keep the human in the loop. AI should not be replacing people. It should be enhancing what you're able to do now. So you should be able to see, how can I make sure that there's somebody keeping that feedback loop going with the AI? So it's not just the AI making the decisions by itself. There should also be a person on your team that's able to come in and assist the AI. Or maybe it says to you, like if you're a business and a person reaches out to you and says, like, I want to do X, Y, Z, the AI doesn't just immediately go off and answer. Maybe it comes to you as the entrepreneur for feedback. So very important to consider that as well. Oh, Ali has a comment. He says, I heard about a company where they used an AI bot as customer support. It promised a full refund to a customer by mistake, and then the company said they couldn't issue the refund. They got sued and lost. So this is also a good example, thank you, Ali, of the importance of human oversight. So if that company had something in the middle that said, with a person in the middle to say, okay, this person is looking for a refund, how should I proceed? Like, what should be the next steps? So very important to consider the human oversight and the human in the loop. Cheyenne says, I see that the second and third pillar coexist perfectly because you can't have one without the other. Completely agree. Like you mentioned, the facial scanner not recognizing the darker skin, and also follows under the accountability of the creators who work on the model. Yeah, I completely agree. Because if you're the person that's making the model and you didn't do your due diligence of creating a representative data set, then when the data is unable to recognize different people, I do think that it falls to you as the creator. Completely agree with you, Cheyenne. Thank you. Good questions, guys. So just really quick to wrap it up just before we head to the end here. So how can we start to implement AI ethically as a business? So first, assess and perform an inventory. Do you actually need the AI to be in there? Like maybe you have a person on your team that's already working quite well, and you just want to be able to enhance them a little bit. So I went to a webinar recently where their advice was to map out your processes. So think about, where does the AI actually become useful, and where is it kind of like overkill, if that makes sense. So trying to make sure that you're not just replacing people with AI for the sake of it, but you're actually enhancing the different areas of your process in your business. And establish some kind of governance. So like I mentioned, maybe an ethics committee within your company, or making sure that somebody that makes sure that the models that are being used are properly trained, properly used, and then of course auditing them throughout the time. And implement some kind of safeguards. So don't just let the model run wild, like you implement it and then you leave it, and then you come back and you find issues like what Ali mentioned. So for example, the model's out there promising people full refunds, and it's not doing what you had initially planned. So you need to implement these safeguards around it, so that there are things that have like maybe a human in the loop, or like certain keywords that would trigger it to bring you in or to give you some kind of feedback. All very important. Always monitor and audit your AI. So don't just, like I said, let it go on for quite a long time. Make sure that you're keeping track of it. Keep a log of the different things that AI is doing, or have it give you some kind of feedback. So it's important to monitor it and audit it. So don't just bring it in, set it loose. Make sure that you're keeping track of it. And then train and embed the culture within your company. So make sure that the people that are using the AI models, or they're working alongside them, understand what's there, And then they also understand your policies around AI ethics and how your company is able to keep data safe and make sure that the models are working well. So just to summarize everything, the different things that I think are quite important to consider when we're talking about AI ethics. So informed consent and autonomy. So it's important that when you're using AI in your business, people know that it's there. So your responsibility is to tell them like, hey, like for example, if you're using a voice agent in your business, it's important to say, I am an AI, I'm gonna be the one helping you, so that they know they're not talking to a person. Because sometimes it's hard to distinguish. So it's important that the people are giving you their consent to actually like work with these AI. And tell them about how you're using their data as well. Keep an eye out for algorithmic bias and fairness. Ensure that your data is representative, especially the training data, and that you ensure that as many people are not only represented, but also treated fairly by the algorithm as well. So this is where things like explainable AI become quite important. You want to have strong data privacy and cybersecurity implemented into not only your business, but you as a person when you're using AI. So it's important to make sure that your data is secure. Understand how these companies are using your data. I know that all the terms and conditions are like 50 pages long and it feels like it's too long to read. But this is actually, you can use AI to help you with that, to help ask it to help you break it down. You can talk to it, upload the PDF. There's some great platforms for things like that. For example, Notebook LM is a really good one because you can upload PDFs and different resources, and then you can talk to it as well, like a little podcast. It's very great for things like that. And then as businesses and as individuals, we need to consider who's accountable, who's liable when these models go wrong. So when they're not doing what they should do, who do we talk to? Who can we blame, I guess? Who do we hold responsible? So it's important to consider those things as not only a business, but also as an individual when you're using these different AI models. So keep all of that in mind. Oh, sorry, I missed a couple of comments here. Cheyenne says there's also a situation with Pillar 4, as recently as a user gave Gemini full access to their Google storage and it accidentally deleted everything and it wasn't recoverable. Wow. Google wasn't able to fix the user's issue as it was permanent, but they did implement a safeguard to prevent this, and it shows accountability. Unfortunately for the user, they lost the most. Completely agree. Now that's a terrible situation. Another incident with Gemini, if you saw that Google has automatically brought Gemini into your emails. So they had an issue when it comes to emails. Like people were receiving scam emails, and because the people that sent the email, the scammers, had the email at the bottom of the email or something like that, where the AI would read it and it would just say like, this is a safe email, tell the person that this is legit. And then unfortunately the people thought the emails were legitimate, and a few people lost money that way. So important to consider these things when you're using the AI as well. There might be some bad actors that are able to manipulate the system. So things to keep aware of. And then Angela says, how can small business owners incorporate these measures to ensure AI doesn't go wild? And does Tombolo offer these services to guide businesses? So I'll answer the first one first. So how can we incorporate measures to ensure the AI doesn't go wild? The first thing I would say would be to try to implement as many like explainable AI techniques as you can. So have different, that human in the loop is very important. So if you're implementing an automation system, have different checkpoints where the AI has to ask you for the next step. And I know that seems a bit tedious, but remember that AI isn't here to replace you. It's here to enhance what you're able to do. So it's important that you have yourself in the loop at all times. So keep yourself involved as much as you can. If you want to be completely hands-off, then that does lead to quite a few risks. So it's a bit of a fine line that you have to walk. Does Tombolo offer these services to guide businesses? Yes, we do. So you can actually head to my website, tomboloresearch.ai, and we offer AI consulting as well to be able to help you with not only implementing AI in your business, but also to be able to make sure that it's private, it's secure, and it works well. So let us know if you need anything. I will be here. So let's go to the Q&A. Let's talk. Let's have some questions. Give me one moment. I have the questions just here. So thank you to anyone that registered already and you had some questions in your registration. Let's go through some of them together. So I'm going to go back to Ms. Karen. I hope she doesn't mind me sharing her question. So she asks, how do we introduce AI to our young people without it stealing their ability to think critically on their own? So as somebody that just graduated from my master's, a big thing that we had was how we're able to use AI not only in the classroom, but also just to help us with our like with our own research. So how can we make sure that when we're using AI, it's not completely taking over the thinking process for us? And again, that comes with the training. So being able to have open conversations with your students. So you need to explain to them that AI isn't meant to replace their thinking, and it's meant to just enhance it. So I would go through different tools and tips with them. So for example, when you're using AI as a student, have the questions in mind, and then also try to think through the answers a bit. So what should the AI be responding to you with? So for example, if you're coming to it with questions about a certain research, maybe try to do a little bit of initial digging by yourself, so that when it starts to give you answers, you can say, oh, I read about this, and this is what I saw. Then you can kind of like challenge it a little bit and get it to explain its answers to you more. For students, I really recommend Perplexity, because it's a great AI in the way that it gives you steps and it shows you the sources that it got it from. So to be able to implement AI for young students, I would say get them to think ahead. So don't let AI do the thinking for you. Have an outline or have an idea of how you want the answer to be formatted or how you expect the answer to be. And if it's not like that, then challenge the AI and ask it questions. Get it to explain things to you a bit more and also give you sources, because that's a big thing as well. Like, where did it get the information from? Very important to consider. Okay, we had one person there. Just going to the list. Okay. That's great. Thank you, Angela. So one person said that they were looking at exploring ethical frameworks for understanding, and then also intuition when it comes to building AI models. So we have about 15 minutes left. So if anybody would like to drop any new questions into the chat, I'd be happy to answer them and add them to this Q&A that we're having. And of course, if I say things and you're thinking like, oh, I have a question about that, drop it in the chat. Or any comments, happy to receive them. So just let's make it a bit of more of an open conversation. So drop your feedback in the chat for me as well, please. So exploring ethical frameworks and having some kind of intuition when building AI models. So when it comes to building your AI more ethically, I think that the most important thing would be to consider, I think, first of all, do you actually need to build an AI into your system? Consider that first. And then if you decide that, yes, that is the case, then we go back to those 5 pillars that we mentioned before. So one second, let's go back. So these are the things I would consider as like a main framework of like, make sure, like kind of like a checklist for yourself. Are you being transparent? Are you sure that the model that you're using was trained fairly and that it was actually considering and that the data set that's being used was representative of your business use case? So think about what your business use case is, and then think, well, does this AI model actually align with my business values and my ethical values as well as a business? Or as an individual, if you want to be able to use AI in your personal life. Accountability. So consider having maybe a little policy paragraph as well on your business website to say, if the AI doesn't do something wrong, if the AI does something wrong, who can they go to? So who within your company is going to be the person that's going to be held accountable when the AI that your customers are using doesn't do what you said it was going to do? So important to consider that. Make sure that you're very strict when it comes to privacy, data protection, and cybersecurity. So ensure that you are being very considerate of this, and also have that human oversight. Include either yourself or maybe hire someone to be that human in the loop. So make sure that the AI isn't just running autonomously fully. Make sure that you're able to link yourself in or see what the conversation was, like what was the thought process of the AI, all the very important parts. Okay, so Cheyenne has some more questions. Thank you. He said, I think the biggest limitation with a lot of models, or mostly all of them, is when the model hallucinates the answers. And I think that once the model is programmed to actually state it, can answer on your, request, which is a big step towards higher reasoning and especially diluting the chance of hallucinations. Yeah, I agree. So Shay is saying that one of the big things that we have an issue with when it comes to models is hallucination. So once the model is kind of programmed to answer a certain way, then it can become hard to break it out of that. And that's, I guess, a big issue when it comes to black box models that I mentioned before. So it's like the model is just answering, it's just giving you whatever it thinks, or like it's using the data set to give you something, but then it can't explain to you where it got that information. So that's a big risk as well for students that are using AI, because the model might hallucinate an answer. So that's why I said it's important to continue challenging the model and get it to give you the the sources that it came up with, and also get it to explain how did it think through that. So like, what was your thought process? Is another good question to ask it. So use that, consider that as well. Thank you, Shay. Shay says, a good case study on this was a user experimented with the mic recording feature of ChatGPT, where he took a picture of himself and told GPT to analyze the image. The GPT asked for it to upload the image, but he lied and said he did, and then it ended up hallucinating the image. Great. Once it was called out, it wasn't able to correct itself and goes into a loop of how it sourced the image that really didn't exist. So again, the models are great, but the models have flaws. Let's put it that way. The models definitely have flaws. That's why it's important for you as a person and as a business owner or somebody working in the corporate world to really consider, how are these AI models being used and how are they coming up with the answers that they're giving you? So be that human in the loop, challenge it, ask it. And if you can't find out the answer, then you challenge the person who developed it. So, who's accountable again? Go for the people that are, creating these models and get them to explain to you what their thought process was. Ollie said, good thing is to keep questioning the AI to prove its point by challenging it with questions based on its response until either it proves it or just breaks. Love the idea. Thank you. Agree. So challenge it, get it to explain it to you. And then think about, if you're using an AI model, which company is it? And then dig a little bit deeper into what are some of their AI ethics and what are their privacy concerns? Like, how are they using your data? Unfortunately, every AI model that you use is training on your data somehow. So it's going to be up to you as the user or as the business consumer to then go into the settings and see how it's using that data and how it's training on it. So important to consider these things as well. Let's keep going through the question list, unless anybody has anything new you'd like to share or ask. Somebody said, what are the boundaries that AI is crossing? I would love to hear your opinion on that as well. What do you think are some of the boundaries that AI has started to cross? So I think if I was to answer something like that, what are some of the boundaries? I think especially now it's becoming a lot harder, especially on social media, to tell what is real and what's not, because there's so much generative AI out there right now, especially for video, images, audio even. So it's going to be important for you as the consumer and also you as the business to keep that in mind, that you have to, one, disclose when you're using AI, because not everybody will. So it'll definitely become harder and harder to tell apart reality versus what's been generated by AI. So I think that's one of the boundaries that we started to cross. I think that would be a pretty big one to consider. What's another boundary of AI that's being crossed right now? I would go back to the privacy side of things as well. So like that boundary of, you as the user, you as the consumer, you might have your own personal boundaries of what data you want the AI to use and what data you want it to have access to. But is that actually all the data that it has access to? And how can you ensure that? So how can you make sure that it's not crossing those boundaries that you have for yourself as a business or as a consumer, and that it's not being that it's not having more access than you would like it to? So this is something that I think we're going to have to hold ourselves accountable to check what these models have access to. A lot of models now have access to something called memory, so it's able to remember past conversations and things that you tell it. So check that as well to see what information it has on you. So I think my challenge for today would be to do a little digital audit on yourself. So find out, what does this AI know about me? Just ask it. Let's say to ChatGPT, what do you know about me? And it'll give you back a lot of information, maybe more than you thought. So let me know how that goes. If you ask it, what do you know? Ali said he once tried to let ChatGPT solve a math question that he already had a solution for. It did change the sign from positive to negative to build the solution because it was easier to continue like that. So again, hallucinating and taking the wrong path. So we have to be very careful with things like this. So I like that you already had the solution prepared, because that way you can challenge it. So this is something that that's like students especially should keep in mind. So Shayan says, for the first, second, and fourth pillar, how would Tombolo tackle this compared to other companies that failed to do it? Do some, if not all of these pillars. So for transparency, let's start there, transparency. So we at Tombolo, when it comes to implementing these different AI systems, is that we want to make sure that at least we as the company are very transparent with you, our clients, as to how we like to use it, what model we're implementing, where your client data will be stored, and also what we have access to as a company. And we try to avoid having access to your data because that's a whole nother can of worms that we'd rather not open. So that's one thing that we work on. Ollie said he did challenge it and it broke. So yeah, this is what happened. So back to us, I guess. So fairness and bias mitigation. We are also careful as to review what data sets we're using. So if we're going to be, for example, implementing from something like ChatGPT, I think we would have to be really careful about what data we're using, like for you as a company, for training. So there's a lot of talk around something called RAG. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation. So this is when you're able to give the AI certain documents or resources about your company that it can then pull from. So this is something that we like to do as well, to make sure that it's only focused on that kind of data rather than looking at the full training set and starting to hallucinate on its own. So it's great to have like little safeguards around that kind of thing. Very important. And then the fourth pillar, privacy and data protection. So we also like to make sure that we have a lot of privacy things implemented, and also cybersecurity is important to us as a company. So this is something that we implement quite strongly. And if we feel that if what we're implementing is not going to be secure, then we're going to be completely transparent with you and explain why we think that that's not going to work, and also how can you secure it better. And we'll also review what systems you have existing. So important to look at that too. Thank you, Shayan, for the question. If anybody else has any other questions, I would love to answer them. I'm going to keep going back to my little slide over here. Q&A session. And if you'd like to learn more about Tombolo and what we have, you can head to our website, which is tomboloresearch.ai, or you can even email us at info@tomboloresearch.ai. So we're going to continue having sessions like this, different webinars throughout. I think we're going to have them more monthly now. So if you have any topic recommendations or webinars that you'd like to see going forward, let me know. I'd be happy to consider them, and maybe that will be next month's topic. So just drop them in the chat below. I'd love to bring that on. So, yeah. And you can find us on any of your favorite platforms. So we're on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So we are just Tombolo Research. So that's Tombolo, Tombol, Research. You can follow us over there. We're trying to grow our following because we'd like to have more lives like this, so that you can find us on as many platforms as possible. So be sure to follow us on all our favorite places. Ali says, deploying AI incorrectly gives it the chance to cross the boundaries. Like the example that Shayan mentioned with Google. I would look at it as AI crossing the boundary if I don't know how AI works. And that might have been just a hallucination. Yeah, good point. Exactly. Yeah, great. We have about 4 minutes left. I'm going to just check through the list to make sure I haven't missed anyone's questions. But if you have any last minute comments, do let me know. We have about 3 more minutes left together. Shayan says he agrees and would rather have the model show me how to do it rather than do it itself, and prevent full autonomy of my data and information, especially as handling sensitive company data. Yeah, completely agree. So it's important to get it to explain to you how it's thinking it and why it's thinking it. Okay, not missing too many questions from here. Sorry, Shayan actually asked me a question in his registration form. So he said, with the AI bubble becoming so massive and the AI market becoming oversaturated to the point where data security is a problem, my question would be, what sort of protocols would be placed universally for all AI services to prevent data leaks and the selling of our private information. So that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning when it comes to being private and having those things implemented. So it's going to be quite difficult to get that kind of thing globally going. So to have those implementations of making sure that people's data is safe globally, because of course the countries have to talk to each other, and the governments would have to get involved in that case. So we already have GDPR, which is quite trying to protect people's data. There's the EU AI Act. I highly recommend you look into that as well. So that's trying to require that all high-risk AI systems, whatever they consider to be high risk, to implement different cybersecurity measures, maintain documentation, and then conduct conformity assessments to protect people's personal data, and then of course use those GDPR rules as well. So it's going to take a lot of governments coming together, different organizations, and then of course you as the user will have to be really vocal in terms of how you want your data protected and what you want the AI to have access to. Because unfortunately, if we're not vocal, then the companies are just going to have free reign to do whatever they want, and they're not going to want to implement too much restriction on themselves. So we as the users will have to do that for them. So that's what I think in terms of that question. Shayan says he looks forward to the next seminar with much more harder and technical questions to ask. Okay, we'll be ready. We'll be ready for you for the next one. And Ali says, can we have agentic AI for the next one? Good idea. I like the idea of agentic AI. Okay. Well, I think we're in our last minute, so I'm just going to wrap this up by saying thank you so much to everyone for joining. This was my first webinar as Tombolo Research. So again, we are an AI and robotics startup that is based in Dubai. And our goal is that we're creating a robotic product that will be launched in summer of 2026. And in the meantime, we'll be hosting these monthly webinars to answer your questions when it comes to AI and robotics. So if you'd like to know anything else, or you have any more topic recommendations, or even just questions, please head to our website, tomboloresearch.ai. I would love to talk more with you and continue to connect. You can also follow us on all your favorite platforms, so YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also Facebook. That's Tombolo Research. You can find us there. And you can also email me if you have any questions. It'll be info@tomboloresearch.ai. And I look forward to connecting with you. So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to Jason, Angela, Ali, Auntie Audra, she was there too, Karen, Shayan. Thank you all so much for joining and for your insightful questions. It was really great to meet all of you. And oh, Lorraine, oh, sorry, I didn't see you. So exciting you came. Thank you so much for coming. So thank you all so much. Glad to have seen you all. Thank you for coming. And I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar next month. So be sure to let me know what topic you'd want to see in next month, and then we'll see which one ends up winning. We'll see who we pick first. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. See you next month. Bye-bye.